Hello everyone, my name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that focus on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our YouTube platform provides us with a space where we can have discussions on all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates allow us to think critically about what needs to change within these structures in order for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, that also translates on recreating spaces, both socially and politically, that enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on this topic, we do write thought pieces every other Sunday. We have one scheduled to drop this upcoming Sunday. And we also now are available via podcast, which I'm super excited about. So we're available on 6 podcast platforms. Definitely be sure to check out the links to the podcast below. Now, as is the convention, definitely be sure to subscribe. Hit that post notification bell so that you're aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like our content and you want to keep these conversations going, definitely be sure to support the channel, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a segment today on mental wellness. And as you can read from the description, we're going to be talking today about forgiveness. And I thought that this would be a perfect opportunity to break scene and to introduce you to my space. And this is the space where I reflect, where I restore, where I release all the energy that no longer serves me. And I think about how I'd like to see my life moving forward. And a lot of that has to do with forgiveness, whether we're forgiving ourselves or we're forgiving the people in our network. Forgiveness is a huge and integral part to our mental well-being. Our capacity to forgive plays a huge role in our mental well-being. And it's something that we talk about and we just kind of assume that everyone has an inborn capacity to do it. But I am the first one who can attest to the fact that I was not born with that muscle. I mean, it definitely took a lot of practice, a lot of intention and mindfulness to develop an understanding of the value of forgiveness, and not for those that need to be forgiven, for myself. And I say this because it's not my natural disposition. It's taken me years to learn that forgiveness is not for the people around me. It's really for me. And it's the first place towards healing, right? The first step towards healing involves forgiveness. And we say this word, but for me, this word really didn't have a whole lot of meaning behind it. It was a concept that flustered and confused me for many years. And I like to share that journey with you, and hopefully the things that I've learned by way of forgiveness can help you and apply to you as well. Now, as I've mentioned, forgiveness is not my natural disposition. I've always been a little bit more inclined towards an eye for an eye. And, you know, it was how I felt better. If someone hurt me, if I had the ability to return the favor, then I could let it go. And that was how I lived the majority of my pre-adolescent and adolescent life. And somewhere along the way, I realized just how much energy I was burning remembering. And there is a lot of energy in remembrance. And when you hold grudges, and I was someone, I'm definitely someone who knows how to hold a grudge, you're holding and retaining a lot of energy that does not serve you. You hold energy that hurts you, energy that fuels pain in you, that fuels anger in you. And that's counterproductive after a certain point. And when I realized that, I realized that really if I wanted to be aligned and I wanted to really be committed to my own mental well-being, I had to learn to forgive. And for me, I've learned that forgiveness is a process. It's not like this magical word that once you say it, automatically all is forgiven and all is forgotten. But I think that forgiveness is a choice that we make, and sometimes a choice we need to make daily, weekly, monthly, on an annual basis until we've reached that space where we've let it go. But forgiveness is the choice, the desire to let something go. And anytime that pain comes up, that hurt, that anger comes up, we respond with either ruminating in that pain, ruminating in sort of the anguish or the anger, or with the choice to forgive, the choice to let it go. And making that choice, however frequently we need to make that choice, puts us in a mindset where we are letting that pain go. We're no longer allowing that pain to have control over us. And that's sort of what I learned through my process and my journey of learning to forgive others, is that it's really committing to the process of letting go of the pain, letting go of the energy that no longer serves you. And this is whether you're forgiving yourself or you're forgiving those around you. And I thought this would be the best place to talk about it, because for me, like, it takes a lot of reflection and a lot of, just introspection for me to reach a place of forgiveness, just because it's not my natural disposition. I'm someone who knows how to hold on to energy, and it's really through practice and intention that I've learned that it's better to let certain types of energy go. I've realized, especially when you're thinking about, pain that impacts you mentally, emotionally, or physically, forgiveness is an ointment. It's this ointment that you apply to your emotional and mental injuries. And it's medicine. It's medicine for the soul. And it might not work overnight, but as most really good medicines, they're not like these quick solutions. But as you continue to apply it, you see that the healing is taking place, and it's not like a surface level healing, it's this deep healing. So the deeper the wound, expect that the longer the process of forgiveness is going to take, but so long as you make that choice consciously, anytime you need to make that choice, and typically that's anytime that those feelings of pain and those raw emotions come up, you kind of just choose forgiveness in that moment, but know that you're applying ointment to that wound, applying ointment to that pain, and you're putting yourself in a better position to be better and not just feel better, to truly heal from that circumstance. I think that one day, what I've learned is one day the memory will come up, and instead of it being accompanied by, pain and by anger and by some of those raw emotions, you'll just have the memory. And at that point, you'll be in a position to reflect on how you want to move forward. Like, what are you going to do now that your perception and your judgment isn't skewed by the emotion and by being too deeply involved in the situation to, make a choice that benefits you in the long run. And I find that it's always best to reach a place where you've forgiven that person before you make a choice moving forward. Know that, forgiveness is the first step, whether you want to maintain a relationship or maintain contact with that person, or you've decided that it's better for you and for them to let them go. Once you've reached a place where you've let it go or where you've forgiven them, you're in a position to understand what you've learned, understand what you've lost, understand how you're going to change your behavior moving forward so that you don't put yourself in that same position again, where you're not finding that you're repeating the same cycle. And often the times when we are repeating cycles that we've committed to ourselves to never engage with, it's because we've forgotten that one step of forgiveness. And I think if we engage in behaviors holding on to pain, we find that inadvertently we end up exhibiting those behaviors in different ways. They show up. So the best way to make sure that you don't carry that pain and have that pain sort of permeate in the way that you interact and sort of engage with people around you is always the better solution. What I've learned the hard way is to start with forgiveness. A common misconception is that forgiveness comes with an obligation for reconciliation, and it does not. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself. It's medicine you give yourself to heal yourself from your pain. But understand that no one is obligated to be in connection, to be in a relationship, to have a friendship with anyone else. And know this as someone who is in the seat of, I don't know if I want to forgive this person, or as someone who is causing injury. No one is obligated to deal with you. And it's kind of harsh to kind of put it that way, but when you think about the way that you show up with the people around you, think about the fact that no one is permanent. And if you assume that someone is in your life forever, and that assumption gives you sort of permission to misbehave, then one day you're going to realize the hard way that that no one should be taken for granted. And while all of us are going to be in a position where we need to be forgiven, I mean, all of us are going to continue on growing and learning, and some of that learning happens with, the slights that we do to other people. We always want to be mindful of the fact, like, if we want someone in our lives over the long term, where we can sort of manage and be mindful about the way that we show up with those people, we definitely should, because relationships are not, especially those relationships that are near and dear to our heart, shouldn't be the ones that we take for granted and that we abuse. Back to forgiveness. What have I learned in my own personal journey is that, once you've reached a place where your judgment's not skewed by the pain, where you can kind of think objectively about what has taken place, you have a couple of choices in front of you. You can choose to repair the damage that was caused and focus on building a bridge and repairing the relationship that was harmed as a result of the infraction. But I think that if you are going to make this choice where you're going to repair the damage and move forward with like these new life lessons that will enlighten you and sort of permeate in the way that you interact with one another moving forward, there are a few prerequisites. There are a few things you want to look for just to ensure that this is the right choice for you. So the one thing you want to look out for is you want to make sure that your emotions are respected, that person recognizes that your emotion, that you were hurt, right? That you were negatively and adversely affected by their actions, and that was acknowledged. Like, that acknowledgement, that confirmation and acknowledgement is absolutely needed as a prerequisite for forgiveness to translate as repairing a bridge. If the person fails to recognize that they've harmed you or to acknowledge that their behavior has hurt you, then you don't really have a strong guarantee that you're not going to be sort of exposing yourself to having more injury sort of incurred to you. So you want to make sure that acknowledgement and that confirmation is there. I guess that leads into the second point, which is you see and you truly believe that they have grown as you have grown, and that you're not going to be going through the same rigmarole again. So you believe that growth is on both sides, and with that belief, you recognize that in forgiving this person and in making the choice to repair and to rebuild a bridge, both of you are going to benefit from that, and both of you are going to contribute to each other's growth and to each other's happiness and well-being moving forward. And the last prerequisite, if you decide to choose on repairing and to build a bridge, is that both of you or all of you, whoever is sort of involved in this process, recognize that more than an apology, more than acknowledgement and confirmation, that a change in behavior is required. And you're all committed to holding each other accountable to that change in behavior, because there's always this transitionary period where it's difficult to take on new behaviors, but that's okay as long as you're committed to it, that you hold one another accountable, and that you see that everyone's taking that commitment very seriously. Then at that point, repairing the relationship, building a bridge, moving forward, knowing that you'll be stronger as a result of going through that tough time, is the right choice for you. You kind of want to make sure that those prerequisites are in place so that you're not just exposing yourself and leaving yourself vulnerable to further injury. Because forgiveness is about self-love, it's about self-respect, and you forgive others as an act, as a gesture of self-love and self-respect. And self-love and self-respect isn't about exposing yourself to being injured and being harmed again. I mean, it's not the point. So the second choice that you can make once you've decided, objectively speaking, the emotions are not sort of skewing your judgment, is you can choose to move on. And this is the thing that people seem to kind of forget. People assume that when you forgive, it means you hold on to that relationship. And forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. And I think that that's the part that often gets confused. I forgive you so that I can heal and that I can be okay and be whole, and I can move forward with my life. My choosing to forgive you doesn't mean that I also need to choose to allow you access to me or back into my life. So when people say, oh, you need to forgive them, and assume that means that you need to continue to allow them access to you or allow them in your life, that's absolutely wrong. I think you want to forgive the people who have injured you. You want to forgive yourself if you've caused yourself injury, because it's healing. It gives you an opportunity to be free from that pain. But it doesn't mean that you owe anyone anything. You don't owe anyone a relationship or a friendship or access to you once you've reached that point of forgiveness. I think sometimes forgiveness releases you to a new chapter in your life that allows room for new actors, new people who vibrate at that level that you are now vibrating at because you've released that energy. and you've committed to change on your own. And if you've committed to change and you've released that old energy and you're committed to behaving in ways that doesn't invite that kind of injury back into your life, then that's a new vibrational level. And if those who have caused that injury are still kind of vibrating at that level that you were at before, then it's better for you to leave them until they've reached a space in their journey where they can reach you where you are at by way of your journey of growth and development. So never feel guilty about deciding once you've forgiven someone, even though you love them, you care for them, you always have love for them in your heart, that you still want to maintain a permanent distance from them. And no one can absolve you of that choice. No one can guilt you for making that choice. That choice is completely yours to make, and only you know if it's the right choice for you to make. And I've always been about stages and phases. Sometimes forgiveness means you let someone go, and after a few stages and phases alone, it might mean that both of you, the growth and development that you've had with that time apart, are now ready to decide or to consider the option of maintaining a relationship or maintaining a connection and moving forward. So it's very important that you're very mindful of the fact that stages and phases, it's cyclical. It's not just like this linear progression. It's up and down, and you always want to seek out the right answer from within, and that requires reflection. It requires thinking very deeply about what you need and what your mind, body, and spirit needs in this moment, and knowing that could always change in the future. And I think that means, you wish them well. If you choose to let them go, it doesn't mean that you wish harm on them. And you forgive them, you truly do wish them well. You wish them growth and happiness, and you continue pushing forward. You continue on your journey, knowing that both of you, your paths will meet in the future or might not meet in the future, and you're at peace with either of those options. Take the lessons, you appreciate what those lessons taught you, how they've helped you grow, and make sure that you remember those lessons without holding on to the grudge, because forgive me, you remember the lessons for what they made of you. I think the third choice, and I think this might be the toxic choice, is you hold on while you struggle to forgive them. And I think that this involves, if they really are seeking your forgiveness, and even if you might want to, but the pain, it creates a lot of anger and anguish in you, and so you punish them. You're holding on because you're trying to forgive them, but it results in fairly punitive behavior. I fundamentally don't believe that people should be punished for the rest of their lives. Either you forgive them and let them go, or you forgive them and repair the bridge. But aiming to forgive someone while punishing them because you can't let it go, I don't think that that's healthy for you. I don't think that's healthy for them. I think that's a toxic cycle that shows that maybe you don't want to let them go. There's part of you that knows that that's the right choice for your own personal growth and development. So think about that. If you're forgiving someone, but you're punishing them for having hurt you, or you feel like they're still angry with them, and you're it's a fairly toxic scenario for the both of you, then think about whether or not you've made the right choice to support your own personal growth and development. Yeah. As I've mentioned before, we all have, and we all will at some point, do something that will require the forgiveness of others. Recognizing that we're all a work in progress, that we're all going to at some point hurt and injure those we care about, and incur hurt or injury from those we care about. Know that the solid choices, if our focus is on forgiveness and is on growth and healing, is to let them go, to forgive them and let them go, or forgive them and focus on repairing the bridge, repairing sort of the damage that was done, knowing that you'll both be stronger and better as a result of having survived that experience together. How do I wrap this up? Love, however it translates, whether it's a friendship or an intimate relationship, what have you. Love is instructive, not destructive. And the one thing that instructive and destructive relationships have in common is pain. And pain is something that can help you grow, that will push you forward and help you become better. But pain is also something that can be very destructive. So you have to know the difference in the relationships that you hold and that you value in your life, whether or not that relationship is offering you instruction and helping you learn and grow, or if that relationship is destructive in the nature by which you are sort of learning life lessons. When you're in a relationship with someone, again, regardless of whether it's a friendship or what have you, you're going to have moments of pain. There's going to be moments in that relationship where you're going to be put in a position where you're going to require the forgiveness of that person or ask for their forgiveness, because we're all a work in progress, we're all growing. So we just want to make sure that as we kind of cycle through these periods of pain that happen in even instructive relationships, that we recognize that it's just a byproduct of growth, it's a byproduct of learning, of the fact that we're all works in progress, and not the effect of allowing ourselves to kind of cycle in and be anchored to destructive relationships. So how do you tell the difference? Well, ask yourself the question, have you grown from this experience? Have you learned something new from this experience? What change of behavior has resulted as a byproduct of this experience? All of those questions, if you can answer them, and the answer, you see that there are benefits and that there are things that you've learned and that the relationship is growing as a byproduct of these lessons, then for sure that pain is still instructive. The love is there. If you're committed to being a better version of yourself, either as an individual or as a unit in that relationship, then I think that that's still instructive despite some of the pain and injury that has been incurred in that relationship. But on the other side of it, if you're asking yourselves these questions, or, are you in a cycle where it's creating a lot of pain, but you don't see a whole lot of growth? I mean, if the answer to that question is yes, then that relationship is most likely destructive as opposed to being instructive. If you feel like you're becoming numb as a result of the pain and the injury that you're incurring, that you're growing indifferent to injury and pain, you expect it, then those are, indicative of being in a more of a destructive relationship than an instructive one. And I think those are the relationships where even if you care about them and love them deeply, the better choice might be to forgive them and to let them go. It's the case that you find that it's not just that you're not growing as a byproduct of this relationship. In many ways, you find that you're regressing. Also, very strong indications that this is more of a destructive love. It's not instructive, and it's time to let that person go. I think some experiences require us to find who we are. Some experiences are so visceral and they're so painful that they immediately bring about a change in us. And sometimes we need to sit with who we have become as a result of that circumstance. We need to get to know who that person is before we can even decide if whether or not this relationship has become destructive from being an instructive relationship, or is still an instructive relationship, but you just kind of need time to yourself to recognize that. And I think that with every experience, there's growth. With every experience, there's a little bit of a change that happens in us. And if that change is very big, then we owe it to ourselves to just take some time alone to restore, to recharge, and to release the energy that no longer serves us. And then to see, well, who are we moving forward? Who do we want to become? What kind of people, what kind of energy do we need to surround us in order to kind of maintain that transition and that path of rediscovery? And ensure that it's a healthy rediscovery, that we're on the right path, and that we're not allowing ourselves to be exposed to injury unnecessarily. And I think that for me is forgiveness. I think forgiveness, again, is a process. It's a choice that we make as often as we need to make it until it becomes a reality. And sometimes that's a choice we need to make once, but sometimes it's a choice we need to make repeatedly. But it's something we do for ourselves. We don't forgive for those around us. We forgive because it heals the wounds that we incur from life, right? From life experiences. And in order to not be weighed down by the energy that, some of those actions kind of put on us, some of that negative energy, you want to forgive to let that energy go. You want to always release the energy that no longer serves you and move on knowing that you've grown, that you're better, that you're wiser as a result of those experiences, whether they bring you high highs or low lows. So I thought that this was a nice little segment, especially it's so beautiful outside. I'm constantly sitting on my rock, and I love this rock so much. This rock has been so beneficial to my own personal healing and my own restoration. And I find so much healing and restoration is available in nature. So definitely find yourself a rock or a thinking space where you can rest, where you can recharge, and where you can release the energy that no longer serves you. And if you're like me or someone who, has a predisposition to hold grudges, know that there's a better way of dealing with things. You don't need to carry the weight of the injuries that you've been subjected to. Know even that choice means that you're causing yourself more pain than is warranted, right? And to free yourself so that you can move forward, not allowing people who shouldn't necessarily have that kind of power over you. In any case, I want to change the scene. I want to introduce you to my Thinking Rock as we talked together about forgiveness. I hope that this conversation helped you. I hope that even an element of this conversation kind of spoke with you, and definitely let me know in the comments, like, what's been your journey with forgiveness? What's the hardest thing that you found about forgiving others, or even maybe forgiving yourself? Definitely be sure to engage, and if you've made it this far, you know what I'd like you to do. Definitely subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share this video or audio if you're listening via podcast. And it's always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.